I am Kesten Rono, and you are here for day 79 of A Course in Miracles. Thank you for your time and attention. Reviewing Principle 19. Miracles make minds one in God. They depend on cooperation because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. Miracles therefore reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. Miracles make minds one in God. All minds are connected, this book would suggest. What would it be to be one in God? Maybe we can take this theoretically literally, that you are a mind in God's mind, that God is the eternal realm of knowledge, that He has His consciousness, that He created you. Where would a consciousness create anything inside of itself? This is why you are holy like God. This is why you are all knowing like God, connected to God, with the ability to see the truth, as the truth is what would be in the realm of eternal knowledge. If you are a consciousness, a mind like God, one in God, if all minds are one in God, they are all His creation. And you are imagining, and you are creating. Where are you creating? Well, within yourself, of course, within God. Miracles make minds one in God. They depend on cooperation because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. The sonship is the sum of all that God created. So everything, all things, can be seen as one, a totality of God's creations. And some idea about the sonship, capital S referring, I'm sure, to the Son of God. It is not complete without every idea of every mind seeing itself as the Son of God, that collectively this is all that God created. We'll have to let that settle. But a simple way we may look at it is that your mind, my mind, both of us having power over mind, with mind, through mind, we see ourselves as the Son of God, or that's what the text would say if you were reading this directly. As I read it to you, it calls you the Son of God, calls me the Son of God. I would imagine the sonship is our individual realizations that we are imbued with something called spirit, and that my right is the same as that your right, and your salvation, as this book uses, is the path for my salvation. But I must take my salvation upon myself, and you yours, and collectively we are making our minds one in God. Why? Well, as we see our own fears for what they are, our upsets and grievances, we see them as illusions, or we are slaves to them. But if we're able to see them as an idea that we may choose to wear or not wear, we may release them with forgiveness. And if we release them and we notice more of whatever it is that we are undoing these things, well, if we are undoing what stresses us, I would imagine we are returning to some stressless experience. We are noticing more ease. What are we noticing? Well, if we believe that our emotions tied to these grievances have been illusions, that they simply are of the past and we are carrying these ideas forward and living beneath them, entering ourselves into a conscious or subconscious cycle of attacks. What are we doing that for? To save something, to find peace. Peace illogical through attack. If we're looking for the idea of peace to grow, we invest in the idea of peace. If we are looking for the idea of attack to grow, we invest in the idea of attack. But fundamentally, we are looking for more safety when we are in this cycle. We crave it. We'd like more meaning in the confusion of why it has to be. That we are looking for this meaning. And because we are looking for this meaning, we may make a decision to recognize that aligning with our grievances, the fears of our ego, is meaningless. It's meaningless. It serves us only insofar as to be reflecting our internal state so we may pay attention and wake up to a more meaningful, purposeful, loving, peaceful existence, which we ultimately crave. Again, if you are depressed and you tell me you do not crave something greater, then why are you depressed? Depression is not happiness. It is not peace. How could you be at peace in depression? The idea of these terms feel in conflict for me. If we could be depressed and call it peace, then our definitions of whatever peace and depression seem to be upended. That we are only at peace when we are at peace with peace, knowing peace. This allows us to see ourselves from this spiritually identified lens. And if we are noticing that our illusions felt false, then whatever it is that we are discovering, even though it feels illogical from the body identified perspective, as we release ourselves into this idea, we notice something more wholly true. So we are casting aside what we believe is false, and we are curious about the truth, more meaning and purpose. That we are fundamentally aligning ourselves with the truth. If we are becoming more aware of the truth, we are becoming more aware of real knowledge, the foundational ideas that allow us to see right through lies and other illusions that would come forth. We would recognize their patterns, at least as being incongruent with how we are feeling as we align ourselves more with ultimately, I suppose, this Holy Spirit, this ability to see the truth effortlessly and to recognize what an illusion is effortlessly. Therefore, to see the truth in all things and to celebrate it. You are always moving through forgiveness, closer to God in this way. This is why salvation depends on you seeing it and me seeing it. This is why we are moving beyond our bodies. We are transcending this idea to have access to the perspective that we are carrying with us at all times with our consciousness, but we are wondering where it is, what it is that we are. Who are we then? if we are not only what we are subscribing to as we are walking around each day? Who are we? Miracles therefore reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. Wherever this space is, whatever consciousness is, feels timeless. That even though we feel we are bound by time, that we believe it has limits relative to the length of our experience within it. If we see our experience within it as relaxing, and we notice whatever it is that we find more peace, it feels like we move into some realm that seems to be escaping whatever time is. Have you ever done a meditation? Have you ever, for even in a moment, realized that you have slipped away, not just in thought, but within yourself? Perhaps you're doing a longer meditation and the time has flown by. But it takes you relatively no time to feel at peace. It takes you relatively no effort. You would say it takes you a lot of time. But what were you experiencing in that amount of time? Timelessness, some kind of flow. But as you move into the spiritual, to the invisible, away from the body, you somehow seem to be moving into a realm that is not measuring things with time, and yet you still are. This is, I would imagine, part of the idea of our salvation, seeing ourselves as sons of God, seeing ourselves in our light, accepting truth, setting aside illusion. If each of us is doing this, ultimately, we are recognizing what it is that we are, our minds. We can still appreciate our bodies, but our minds seem to be playing an intricate role here, so we are moving closer to it in this way. We can see how we are becoming identified with our minds. And then if we are seeing ourselves through some kind of holiness, we are minds in God, the sum of all of our minds, the sonship of what God has created. And this bends, reverses, changes, anything. It just is a set of different laws than the ones we experience physically with our five senses and normal exchange, what we call normal exchange. Miracles therefore reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. This is at least part of what you are. Let miracles replace all grievances. Lesson 79. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. A problem cannot be solved if you do not know what it is. Even if it is really solved already, you will still have the problem because you will not recognize that it has been solved. I like this idea. I totally agree already. Wouldn't you imagine that you have to go apply something to solve something? What if it was already solved? Have you thought about this ever? If it's already solved, certainly we are working way too hard, and it is simply our awareness of noticing that this is already solved. I laugh at myself when I see that I am trying to take care of little odds and ends for myself or my partner. And she, I come to find, had already solved it. I couldn't think of a world where it wasn't solved. Recently, I had this happen several times in a row throughout a day or a weekend, and I had to laugh. I am seeing a world where these things are not taken care of, and they've already been taken care of. Unique considerations, creating ease, just for me or for us that I couldn't imagine had already been done. But not only had they already been done, they had the signature of something very sweet, of someone who has been paying attention to the way that I might be and attempting to make my life feel more at ease and leaving it there for me to discover for myself. I could only laugh and say thank you and kindly look upon myself for however I had been thinking. How many times would I have to notice that I'm being taken very well care of? And I'm discovering it by attempting to do the same or return the same. It is possible for within some amount of time for us to be unaware that a problem has already been solved and therefore think that it must still be existing. A problem cannot be solved if you do not know what it is. Even if it is really solved already, you will still have the problem because you will not recognize that it has been solved. This is the situation of the world. The problem of separation, which is really the only problem, has already been solved. Yet the solution is not recognized because the problem is not recognized. Your separation, my separation, has already been solved. But we cannot see the solution because we cannot truly recognize the problem. Everyone in this world seems to have his own special problems, yet they are all the same and must be recognized as one if the one solution that solves them all is to be accepted. That would create an opportunity for ease. If there could be a simple solution to all of our problems, even though they all seem unique, if they could all have the same solution, and if that solution already exists, well, it would just be up to us to realize we can do one thing and fix all problems. That would be a fantastic idea. Let's say that it is a fantastic idea. Who can see that a problem has been solved if he thinks the problem is something else? Even if he is given the answer, he cannot see its relevance. That is the position in which you find yourself now. You have the answer, but you are still uncertain about what the problem is. A long series of different problems seems to confront you, and as one is settled, the next one and the next arise. There seems to be no end to them. There is no time in which you feel completely free of problems and at peace. I agree. The temptation to regard problems as many is the temptation to keep the problem of separation unsolved. Let's read that again. The temptation to regard problems as many is the temptation to keep the problem of separation unsolved. If I believe I am separate from God or separate from myself, therefore, then I will be able to find many problems. If I want to see my problems as one with a single solution, I will connect with myself and God. The world seems to present you with a vast number of problems, each requiring a different answer. This perception places you in a position in which your problem solving must be inadequate and failure is inevitable. I had never considered it that way. That I have been wearing a lens of multiple problems which require unique solutions. Because I want to be creative or successful, however I'm measuring it, I can often find myself unable to see what the solution is, or if I had it, how I would pursue it. I imagine I don't really have a great idea of what the problem is, or that I'm afraid to look, and therefore it seems vast and unmanageable. This perception places me in a position in which my problem solving must be inadequate, and failure is inevitable. Yes, I'm setting myself up from a fundamental position of inadequacy. And perhaps I do not even dare pursue some of these things because my failure is inevitable, in that I believe that I just do not know, or that I imagine I need to be successful to some expectation I'm setting if I'm new with this problem. This book is suggesting that problems, or being new or not, or associating ourselves with a perspective that says there are infinite problems. And when one finishes, you'll have a new goal with new problems, or you'll have a new set of inundations with new problems, each one requiring your energy. You will never have the time and peace that you expect to have, and therefore you will be run ragged. And if you cannot problem solve all problems, which feels very daunting, then your problem solving will always be inadequate relative to the amount of problems. I suppose we can get on a treadmill here. We might even trick ourselves that as we solve a problem, we realize we are better problem solvers. I would say, in general, I feel I'm a reasonably well equipped problem solver. And yet I could feel ways in which that I have been punishing to myself or harsh on myself because I believe I am not solving a problem. I'm creating one for myself in my mind. And then when I see life through that perspective, well, it's lacking at minimum. No one could solve all the problems the world appears to hold. They seem to be on so many levels, in such varying forms, and with such varied content, that they confront you with an impossible situation. Dismay and depression are inevitable as you regard them. Some spring up unexpectedly, just as you think you have resolved the previous ones. Others remain unsolved under a cloud of denial and rise to haunt you from time to time, only to be hidden again, but still unsolved. Yes, a never-ending litany of problems. Sometimes this can be advertised to us. Can you feel the state of being that you are in if you are constantly buried by current and new and unexpected problems, and that you are expected to solve them all to find peace? It doesn't feel like peace is going to be achieved by focusing on problems that need solutions. All this complexity is but a desperate attempt not to recognize the problem, and therefore not to let it be resolved. If you could recognize that your only problem is separation, no matter what form it takes, you could accept the answer because you would see. You would see. You could accept the answer, and you could see its relevance. Perceiving the underlying constancy in all the problems that seem to confront you, you would understand that you have the means to solve them all. And you would use the means because you recognize the problem. If we can fundamentally see all of our problems as the problem of separation, then we can see a universal problem in all of our problems and a universal opportunity for solution in all of our problems. We are looking for the underlying constancy in all the problems that seem to confront us, so that we may understand we have the means to solve them all. Verses. Attempting to believe that you need to solve all the problems that the world holds on so many levels. If you see it as infinite problems, each being unique, well, then you have an infinitely impossible task. You are living in a world of problems. If you believe that these problems could have something constant amongst them that you can notice and that you can affect, well, then you can get at the root of all problems. In our longer practice periods today, we will ask what the problem is and what is the answer to it. We will not assume that we already know. We will try to free our minds of all the many different kinds of problems we think we have. We will try to realize that we have only one problem, which we have failed to recognize, which we're being offered to consider is our separation from the Holy Spirit, from God, from our truer selves, or at least from our conscious selves, from our spiritual identified self. We will try to free our minds of all the many different kinds of problems we think we have. We will try to realize that we have only one problem, which we have failed to recognize. We will ask what it is and wait for the answer. We will be told. Then we will ask for the solution to it, and we will be told. So let us move forward with some trust that when we ask questions, answers are revealed. We simply wait. The exercises for today will be successful to the extent to which you do not insist on defining the problem. Perhaps you will not succeed in letting all your preconceived notions go, but that is not necessary. All that is necessary is to entertain some doubt about the reality of your version of what your problems are. Are you willing to accept that maybe you cannot see a commonality amongst all of your problems? If you can accept that you have some doubt about the way that you have been seeing things, then that curiosity, even though you don't know, to ask the question about what this really is all you need today. You are trying to recognize that you have been given the answer by recognizing the problem, so that the problem and the answer can be brought together and you can be at peace. You are trying to recognize that you have been given the answer by recognizing the problem. There would be no problems, truly, if by recognizing the problem, we were innately given the answer. That they exist side by side. That we have been staring too hard at the problem, unable to see the answer, simply waiting for us to turn and check in with it. And in our focus on the problem, we are still unable to see it for exactly what it is. So let us ask the question today to recognize the problem, so we may ask the question, well, what would the answer be for this problem? The shorter practice periods for today will not be set by time, but by need. You will see many problems today, each one calling for an answer. Our efforts will be directed towards recognizing that there is only one problem and one answer. In this recognition are all problems resolved. In this recognition there is peace. Be not deceived by the form of problems today. Whenever any difficulty seems to rise, tell yourself quickly, let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. Then try to suspend all judgment about what the problem is. If possible, close your eyes for a moment and ask what it is. You will be heard and you will be answered. Suspend all judgment about what the problem is. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what is this? And trust that you will be heard. Trust that you will be answered. You are curious, of course, about seeing your problems differently. If you believe that you are not curious about seeing your problems differently, please hear how you are likely accepting a perspective that your problems are constant and unsolvable. Maybe a couple of them you have sorted out, but what about the next problems? Do you want to spend your energy solving problems? Is this the way that we want to continue to see our value? Through hardship? That you can only find things that are worth doing if they are hard. That is the only way that we can be made, by seeing the difficulty in everything. Could we not just do the same things but see the ease in them? Would that still be the same experience? Or would it be fundamentally different? That we are now looking around and appreciating the ease in all things. What would that feel like? So we are curious about an idea of more peace. Otherwise, like I said before, we would have to admit that we are at peace in these problems. Now, maybe you like solving things. It is fun to solve a puzzle of any kind. Figure out our way through a game. Of course. But do you feel that a puzzle is a problem? Or a game is a problem? Let's not trick ourselves. When we notice problems, what we believe are sources of our upsets, and we are defining them as a problem, and we feel what it feels like in our nervous system to say, ugh, that's a problem. That's bad. That's hard. That's sad. That's scary. There's no peace in these ideas because these ideas are not peace. So let's not trick ourselves into thinking that we want to be living with our problems. Let's be aware that we are curious about seeing it a different way, that we are skeptical about a life that needs to be subject to problems, about a perspective that can only include a way of looking at something and saying, dang, there's no way, or I'm going to have to figure it out. This is going to be hard. Maybe you fundamentally believe that you can figure anything out. I'd like to grant myself the idea that I have everything I need. I'm never given a problem that's greater than I can solve. Well, now the current game and puzzle is to say, will you relax your idea on problems so you can see the entire game differently? Perhaps you would like to see it from a lens of peace rather than a lens of problems. That alone should be able to carry us forward and say, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Please repeat after me. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. You will not see the solution if you cannot see the problem. If you believe there are many problems, please allow an idea today into your mind that the reason you believe there are many problems is because the problem of separation is unsolved. You are still separate from seeing the truth in all things. Therefore, you see them for their problem, which is the reflection of saying, you're not seeing this the right way. That's your own idea to yourself. You're looking around and saying, this is a problem. No pasa nada. No problem. One person can look at something and say, I don't know how I'm ever going to fix this. Someone else can walk by and say, this? No pasa nada. This is no problem. Here, let me show you. It's so easy for them, it's already been solved. They look at it and they just see the opportunity for the solution. Okay, so this is a physical example. That's why we have people come to our homes or take our cars somewhere if we have those luxuries to help solve the problems that we don't know what they are, and therefore we don't know what the solution is. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. The temptation to regard problems as many is the temptation to keep the problem of separation unsolved. The world only seems to have a vast number of problems. And if you believe this, your problem solving will be inadequate and you will fail. How could you solve everything, especially everything perfectly? It feels like a recipe for depression or anxiety or shame. Are you looking backwards or forwards in time and adopting what emotion? We are creating complexity so we do not have to see what the problem is. If I had to see the problem, I would have to let it be resolved. All this complexity is but a desperate attempt not to recognize the problem and therefore not to let it be resolved. If you could recognize that your only problem is separation, no matter what form it takes, you could accept the answer because you would see its relevance. We will try to realize we have only one problem, which we have failed to recognize. We will ask what it is and wait for the answer. We will be told. Then we will ask for the solution to it, and we will be told. So when you believe you are facing a problem today, even if you think you know what the problem is, please set it aside and simply say, let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. And in admitting we do not recognize, let us suspend all judgment about what this problem is. We're doing that before we say this. Let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. There's a possibility I may have been looking at it wrong, in the sense that I have not allowed myself to see what it is. Instead, I have been applying meaning to it. I've been declaring what it is. And I cannot even therefore see the purpose of what the problem is, which is to wake up to my own separation that continues to create problems. If you are in this alignment, we would imagine then that things are aligned. And when we are separate, we feel afraid, which I suppose can lead us to feel afraid. Let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. You will be heard, and you will be answered. I am Kesten Rono, and I am willing to believe that the way I have been seeing things has not been serving me, and I am willing to believe that I have been hyper-focusing on there being a problem. I have been scared of seeing the problem, and therefore I feel as if I am fearful of accepting the solution. Today I will set aside, as best I can, my preconceived ideas and emotions about problems, and ask for what this problem is to be revealed. Let me recognize this problem so it can be solved. That God has equipped me with a simple solution of ease for anything that I believe could ail me. That they are all the same. And so today, I'm opening up my mind to a perspective that would allow me to live a life where I no longer see it full of problems. So please, let me recognize what this problem is so it can be solved. And I will do my best to release the meaning that I have been applying to it, to the problem and to its solution. May it be easier than I ever imagined. May it already be solved. And may I finally notice. See you tomorrow for day 80.